This is the Change Physician, episode 118. Welcome back. I'm Melissa Cady, the Challenge Doctor, with my co-host, my amazing, stupendous, the words that Kevin always uses for me, returning it back as a gift to him, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro. And this episode is going to be a deep dive into an amazing interview we just had with Billy and Akaisha Kaderli. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Well, their story, we could have probably dove a little deeper, a little longer on so many details of what has amounted to at least 30 plus years of being in retirement. And this is a couple that made an intentional choice to leave the crazy, busy life of working all the time and trading time for money. And finally, they realized the value of what they even mentioned, compounding, and how to really understand your assets and how that can grow over time. And if you pay attention with intention, with awareness of what you really truly need, it actually is possible to retire with a decent nest egg that can grow amazingly over time. So Kevin, any first thoughts on this episode that we just finished with the Kaderlings? Or Kaderli?
Yeah, no, it was, this was a big one. Like, we've done a lot of cool episodes, but this one, what I found absolutely astounding is not only did they retire, this is true FIRE, like financially independent, retire early, which is the big buzzword, and physicians obviously are, because they're so dissatisfied. I don't know, whatever, everybody gets dissatisfied, craft your life first and then everything else will work. But this whole FIRE movement, which has seemed really sort of taken off in the last, say, 4 or 5 years, and there's all these popular blogs. And what I always find interesting about those is people quote the numbers, and we're really good about quoting numbers and saying, well, this should be possible, or this is what I'm doing. And then some people are pulling the cord and stopping their employed status and kind of starting to pursue this path. But what's really different about Bill and Akaisha is the fact that they did this when they were 38 years old. So this is a fairly young FIRE. They did it in 1991. And it's been 30 plus years now that they've been doing this. So my physician brain goes, there's data here. They're not talking about this. There's data that we can use. So you can see, and we can kind of assess that. And now, granted, this is anecdotal in this case point of one, but their website also has a lot of details with this kind of tiny community there. And so what I love is because you can look at the length of time, and granted, past performance doesn't predict future returns, as they were saying in the retirement business. But when you have 30 plus years of past data, we will never know what the future brings, but it provides a greater degree of, that's what our brains use to project what the potential may be. So amazing episode there and a lot of the mind shifts that come in with it. And so my major takeaway was, one of my favorite things they talked about was when they made the initial plan, they didn't tell anybody. And I mentioned in there, it terrified me as a parent because they didn't tell their parents, but I could understand completely the reasons why that you would do it. And so for the change physician community, I think that's really important is recognize that negativity is going to be out there no matter what your plans may be. And certainly if you're going to pursue an alternative path like this. And then two, so you may not find the resources or support from those around you. If you are anticipating that in advance, I am generally pretty open. Well, I would say that all the time. I'm kind of open about things, but my recommendation would be what they said, and don't tell those people. If you think that they're going to be negative about it, don't tell. And then instead find, and we can do this with the internet now, find communities, find like the Change Physician community where there's going to be people who are supportive of you. And there's obviously a lot more resources around that now. But that negativity can really, really hold you back, and it can be very dangerous and prevent what could be an amazing transition for you. But that was the biggest one. It was the data for me, having 30 plus years, and then sort of like those initial steps that they did. How about you?
Yeah, to just make a comment off of that, the approval portion is something that you have to evaluate in yourself. Like, do you feel like you need approval from others to pursue something? And like you're saying, you're choosing who you share it with based on, if you have conviction of what you want, and certain people are not going to approve, yet you're kind of wanting it, or you're trying to test them out, it depending on how strong that conviction is, that could lead you astray from potentially maybe what your true purpose or self or however you want to describe it. But if you know out of strong conviction what you want to do, you need to put yourself in a situation where you're going to be supported. But if you're wavering based on other people's approval, there's a personal development aspect that needs to be assessed. Now, on another note, something that they brought up that I really liked, I know you did too, is the difference between travel and vacation. And so a life of travel, which is something I just think is awesome. I think even in my current, when we go on vacation, we try to make it more affordable based on, where we stay versus like the very touristy things or places. And many times we want to just kind of live like the people that are there, maybe in some more rural areas, or even just, Airbnb, stay for a while, versus some of these sort of high-end kind of things. So I think that was a critical portion when they're looking at the percentage of, or what they're spending, and trying to make sure it's within the realm of what their retirement money allows them to do. And so I think travel is the more pragmatic, logical way of looking at that kind of lifestyle versus the vacation-y, glitzy kind of, vacations. Those things are going to drain your your accounts way faster than to be able to support that kind of lifestyle, which they've done for so long. It makes sense that they were able to figure that out, and the whole arbitrage thing, the geo arbitrage, which you could talk about if you want.
Yeah, but let me just in case someone missed that episode, and if you have missed that episode, stop and go back and go
Right.
watch it, right? But to be really clear, what when we're talking about travel versus vacation, travel is really living like a local, where you're going in for the lived experience of what it is to be in that community. Vacation is what you take when you're trying to escape from your life, and we all vacation, but very few of us travel, And I think that's important because I know people who vacation, and they vacationed all around the world, and they think that they have traveled, and they have not traveled. They've vacationed. And if you stay in 5-star resorts everywhere you're going, you're not getting a taste of that community. That could be great from a vacation standpoint, but you're missing the opportunities for that traveling where, again, getting what the locals are doing. Like, you just think about in the United States, people don't go to Disneyland every day. They don't go to a 5-star restaurant every day. They do it for a special occasion. And a lot of times that's what we see. That's what our vacations are. And they're not necessarily traveling. What I liked when they were talking about, and I loved it, I think it was Akaisha said the difference between traveling and vacation, and she sort of defined it in this range, is traveling not only then becomes very fulfilling, but it's also very affordable, and I don't think, I think people in some ways have a fear that they're going to retire and they're saying they're going to travel the world. But really their thinking is, I'm going to retire and I'm going to vacation around the world. And that can easily test your retirement boundaries depending on where you are. And if you're assuming that's what it's going to be, you may artificially inflate the number that you actually need to do the things that you want by so much that you don't get the opportunity to do so.
Right.
And that became important because, with Bill and Akaisha, with 30 plus years, they start at 38 and they're saying, well, they have friends that are just starting to retire now. Now, they may not be in the same physical point where they would like to have been, where they can start doing these experiences. And I think, like you and I we're very much in talking about the resilience of the body. And I don't necessarily, you're not necessarily as old as whatever your chronological age is. But unless you're really aggressive about keeping up your health, that is a concern that people need to have, is, are you going to be physically capable to do those things that you want to do? Mm-hmm. And if you aren't, and that may actually have an impact too, because if you're requiring constant care, or you need to be catered because you simply aren't physically capable to do this stuff, now not only did you delay your retirement, but your retirement is going to be more expensive because you can't do, I don't know. It's just crazy how the brains start making these things, and then we start creating the problems that we're trying to avoid with by staying in the horrible, working ourselves to death in the situations that we already have.
Right. And something I wish they could do a study on, because there's not a lot of Akaishas and Billys out there. I wonder if you can go 30 years of not having to slug it out with a intense lots of hours, stressful job, feel like you're just trading time for money. It's not as fulfilling. You don't get the breaks or the time with your family and all that valuable time with children. If you have children, you kind of wonder what the health outcomes are for someone like for them versus people that have been slaving away, like working their tail. I mean, not that they don't work, but they do it on what is before them, in front of them, and they've created a clean slate to allow them to step into helping others when it's deemed necessary, and versus like being told they have to go to work. I wonder, health outcomes wise, what the difference would have been versus if they had continued. If you just look at the N of two, two people, their life, if they had not done this for 30 years, versus them doing it. And so I wonder if you could look at a population as a whole, what I just feel, just knowing how stress and lack of sleep and all those things can impact your overall health, that it's got to actually make that typical 68-year-old retiring person that maybe had 30 years of retirement already probably healthier than if, the other way around.
Yeah, and then we have to kind of, because I'm sure, let me click on, now I'm gonna, as soon as we get done, I'm gonna actually do a Google search and see if I can find anything around this.
Yeah.
But you kind of, the difference is really coming down to crafting the life that you want, right? We're not saying if you love your practice and love what you do, the distress there may be all these people telling you, well, you need to retire, when you're like, I don't want to retire. I love what I do. And if you love what you do, continue doing what you're doing, and you will be likely healthier, happier, because you'll have a meaningful life, which is what we're talking about.
Right.
Distress is for the people who we have seen and heard and talked to that are doing things that they don't want to do because they feel like they have to do them.
Right.
And when you're stuck in that sort of situation, and now you're going, well, I need to do this for 30 plus years, doing the things I don't want to do, and how I don't want to do them, or on days I don't want to do them, on a schedule I don't want to do, and you're going to delay that now for 30 years. I can pretty much guarantee, just based on like distress and eustress physiology, they're going to be in worse shape at the end of it. So now that's the typical one we're talking about, where you've delayed life and living for so long that you retire, and now you can't live or have a life that you want, because you've basically you've paid the price over those 30 years of high distress, high misery, which we come to turn to our message with the change of physician is, does everybody have to retire early? No, a lot of people don't want to do that. It's all about crafting a meaningful life and creating a life that works for you. And rather than looking for these external guideposts to say, this is what you should be doing.
Right.
Because if you let the external world tell you what you need to be doing, I can guarantee you that the interest involved is going to be theirs and not yours. And a lot of times they aren't going to align in a very positively stress aligned manner. So.
Nope, totally agree. There's I guess a lot of work involved, in the sense that, first of all, I think we get so caught up in working that sometimes we don't know what we want. So that is like, I think, the first awareness piece. And just listening to them during that conversation, it's inspiring. It makes me think more about what I want. It makes me think about how to redesign, and the things the story you tell yourself on, because there's so much information out there, but somehow we create this story. I forgot the words she used exactly, but we kind of decide that it's not going to be able to happen for whatever reason. So I could see that in my own life, where I stall a little bit on pursuing certain things, and that's, I think, a natural tendency. But like Billy said, you're not gonna be able to do it until you do it. It seems so obvious, but you just have to take the step and put yourself out there and go for it, if you know that's what you want. And so you'll find a way. And he talked about the competence and confidence that comes around with, not everything's gonna always go as planned, but you just got to roll with the punches, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, and they're obviously very comfortable being uncomfortable. Yes. And meaning if you have to have not perfect per se, but you have to have certainty, and there is no certainty in the world, you're going to be kind of holding back to that kind of past predictive stuff, versus if you're a little more comfortable with being uncomfortable, no, you can do uncertain things. And that's not necessarily, I think we've even done an episode on that. Like, I think we did an episode on uncertainty and
Light versus easy, or
well, I don't know. It comes out again as a theme is rather than the comfort of misery, because misery is certain. Like if you are in a miserable existence, you know what that is certain, is to be a little bit more comfortable with the uncertainty. Like there could, it could get worse, but it could also be better.
Right.
And that's the thing that we oftentimes tend to forget. It could be better, or a lot of times situations we have people, it really can't get much worse. Like if you had this is the thing about, if you have a job in healthcare, like if you hate your practice, sure, you can move someplace else. There's a good chance it won't be any better, but it could be better. And if you change and you transition to someplace no better than where you are at, well, what have you necessarily lost? Well, if you're not dumb about it and don't do things like I did, would buy a house when I came out of fellowship, and do these things, which relates very heavily to this. If you don't focus on the things,
yes,
and you minimize those debts, like mortgage, I think the original French means something to death, right? It's basically tied you to your death, this payment towards death. And don't saddle yourselves with the things. We're going to have these. Oftentimes we'll have the big debt load that comes with physician loans, but then really, really pay attention to what those other debt loads are. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have those, then it gives you the chance to change practices, move to different areas, find different people that you're aware of. There are some good practices out there. There are some good health environments. You can start crafting it. Maybe those don't work. You can start doing the locums route. We've had a ton of locums physicians on here. But if you're intentionally designing the life that you want now, my suspicion is that you're practicing becoming uncomfortable. You're going to build that skill muscle. You're going to know things can change. You're going to be comfortable with change. When you do decide to pull the ripcord, maybe you not go full time, or maybe you go to a locums route, or maybe you do work a month and then go away someplace else for a month. Doing that transition is going to be a lot easier than, I have to kill myself, to my overlords in the hospital, seeing my patients every 7 minutes or whatever. And I'm going to do this for 20 years. And then I'll have this big stockpile of money, but I'll have never built up my muscle group. I won't be able to travel because I'll have to vacation because I'm scared to get out into the surroundings and see what the real people are like. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wish I had known this stuff.
Yes.
I feel better because at least I started transitioning, and I kind of think my transition came around the age of 38-ish. Yeah. Mid to late 30s is when I started really kind of seeing that there was something more. Mm-hmm. And I think what we talked about with David Aguinas it was like Tim Ferriss's book or whatever. But I wish I had known this stuff in my 20s.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I may not have changed anything, but I would certainly have. I guess there was a couple things I would have changed, but not many. I wouldn't have bought a house in San Diego. That's one. But, yeah.
Well, it would have given us a head start, and potentially, especially when it comes to financial investment stuff. For some of us, probably I could have been more aggressive earlier. Although I was in medical school and had gone through bankruptcy in my prior relationship, and so I was probably behind the curve there. But it definitely would have been nice to probably been a little bit more aggressive on some of the investments before I really had a job. Like literally probably could have filled before I actually made some decent money, that a Roth I could have packaged up a little bit better. But past is past. All you can do is now, versus at least we're not 60 something just now thinking about this.
yeah that's the other thing, and there's always still the opportunity. So we're the same age, I think, right? We're 40. I'm 48. You're 48.
I'll be 48 in April.
Oh, so I'm older than you. I'm the older one. I'm the older one here.
Yeah.
But like I said, this difference between 48 and 68 is there are still things that if we're using hindsight and say, well, I should have done this 10 years ago, and compounding, which is really a remarkable thing. You can still do it where if you drop the spending and adjust the debt load now, you can still set yourself up really, really easily.
In 20 years.
Well, not even 20 years. Here's the other thing is, and if we can get him, there's another blog, Mr. Money Mustache. And one of the things that was really eye-opening to me is you always hear people on the saving side, but he really focused on the spending side.
Mhm.
don't buy a bunch of crap. And when you look at what you're spending, if you are saving like 50% of your income, oh my God, that's so hard. Well, if you don't buy a bunch of crap, it's actually not that hard.
Yeah.
But if you're saving 50% of income, he actually had a little graph on there because he's an engineer, and those engineers guys always like to have graphs on things. But based on that, on your savings rate, you can predict when you would become financially independent. It was not that long, like 8 years or 9 years or 10 years or something, but it was certainly not 20 or 30 that you're typically told. So this idea of people being, this idea of save 10% of your income. Well, if you're saving 10% of your income, that generally translates to 30 years of savings in order for you to become financially independent.
Yeah.
All around your spending rate, though. So I don't know. It's just. I hope people got out of that interview that there is, not only is there potential, not only do we have bloggers talking about it now and how they want to do it, but people have done it, and they've done it for decades. We just didn't know.
Yeah. Yep. Boom. Why don't you take us out?
Take us out. So. Take us out, Scotty. All right. Well, thank you, folks, for joining us on this after the episode discussion with my Amazeballs co-host, Dr. Melissa Cady. This is the Change Physician Podcast. Please join us if you're looking for a community of like-minded individuals, challenging that norm, designing the life and living styles that you want, and getting comfortable with uncomfortableness and uncertainty. Go to thechangephysician.com. And until next time, stay well.
Take care.
Amazeballs.